Everyone, my name is Robin McWaldron. Welcome to this live Facebook question and answer session today. We've just had a few little internet issues with it not connecting, so hopefully we're all good to go now. So I would like to welcome Mark Lamont here today to this Q&A session. Mark is a retired clinical neuropsychologist and he's here today to take your questions. So please take this opportunity to ask Mark all the questions that you have, because that will make this so much better in terms of that interaction between you and Mark. So I'll hand over to you, Mark, and you can take the questions that come through.
Okay, hello everybody. I hope you can hear me. I'm not sure whether we want to go straight into some of the questions that I've already received. Is that what we want to do to start with, Robin?
We can do that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll start with a couple of questions, and if there are other questions, I'm in front of a group here in Ulverston, and they may ask us questions, and I hope you will. And if other people have questions, Robin, are they to ring in? How do they do that?
No, we'll just be taking questions.
But it'll just be from here today. Okay. So obviously, if there are other questions that you have, there's places like the Brain Injury Association of Tasmania that will probably be very happy to respond to your questions. Most of you have had contact there before. We've been talking here today about neuroplasticity, and I've spoken to other groups in the state, in Launceston and in Hobart, in previous sessions with the support groups about neuroplasticity. So some of the questions relate to that. I might just prefix those questions just to remind you what we mean by neuroplasticity. So we've been talking about that today, about sort of two sides of neuroplasticity. One is where the brain forms new connections. New neurons will be formed to pick up and take over the function and the role of parts of the brain that have been damaged. So the brain tends to do that fairly spontaneously after injury, and it's almost like if there's a pothole on the road, then the workmen come out there and start to mend it. And that the brain does that spontaneously. It's got a sort of work crew out there doing this on a regular basis. The other sort of thing that we'll go on to is that if I can't do a particular function and my brain has been damaged in a particular area, then another part of the brain may start to do the same function, not by imitating what the first bit, the bit that's missing has been doing, but by modifying the way it does things. So for instance, I may have trouble remembering things visually. I might find that, when I look at things, I forget those things very quickly straight away. Now that is normally associated with storing things in the right side of my brain. So if the right side of my brain is damaged, then if I keep trying to use that, it's not necessarily going to make a big difference. On the other hand, just move that out of the way, I don't know if you can see that. On the other hand, if I start to use the left side of my brain, which is more to do with the verbal memory, then I can compensate. So I might start to make pictures in my head and see things. I might start to describe what I am seeing. So if I witness an accident on the road, and I know that I might have to remember that, rather than just relying on my visual memory, I might write that information down, or I might certainly talk myself through what happened, use language which is stored on that part of the brain to describe the visual information that I have processed normally on that side of the brain. So in other words, my language can describe what I am seeing. Likewise, I can make pictures of things that I am being told. So as people are telling me information and describing things to me, that will come to the left side of the brain. I can make pictures of that information and particularly if that part of the brain is intact and that's the part that's damaged, then this intact part will retain the pictures that I'm making and I can recall information. So some of you may remember I've used an analogy of jump starting a car, and I can talk through the sequence of that and read about how to do it, but if my verbal memory is poor, I'll have difficulty with that. But if I make pictures in my mind about that process, then I'm more likely to recall that. So that's a bit like, that is sort of the way the brain works in terms of neuroplasticity. So the two sorts, one being the structural plasticity, where the workmen get out and repair the area. The other is where another part of the brain picks up the function, does the same, gives it the same outcome, but by a different method. Okay? So one of the questions that I have here is, and it's about short-term memory, and it's a related question. So sorry for looking away, but I'm going to read the question to you. I'm doing CogniFit every day. CogniFit being a brain game. Is there a better program? I'm slowly improving and love it, and I do it every day with my husband sitting next to me. I find the quick timing, quite a lot of pressure. I have very little time to do the task, but some of them are fun and they're enjoyable. So, for example, one of the tasks apparently is where this person has to watch lights in sequence. I think they might be flowers or something, flower dots in sequence, and then to repeat that sequence. And those sequences get faster or more complex. And so she's been training in this and finding that difficulty. How do we work on improving that? First thing I'd say is, if you're enjoying it, fine, that's great. But I wouldn't be expecting a task like that to be generalising. So I've tracked down a little bit of information there, and what I guess, we're all familiar that there's been a lot of computer-based learning and computer-based, brain games and so on that have come up. Most of them making extravagant claims about how this will, improve connectivity and so on in the brain. The consensus seems to be that what these tasks do is they will teach that particular skill, but that particular skill does not necessarily generalise. So if I'm trying to use a tracking task like that to improve my speed, well, the question to me is, what do I want to use that for? Why am I wanting to improve my speed? And it's probably better to think, well, I want to improve that speed because I know that when I get to do the dishes or when I go to do a cooking task, it takes me forever. Well, the speed will pick up if you work on that task. Practice that task and your speed will pick up on that task. But doing a lot of the brain games doesn't necessarily transfer across to some of these other skills. It is important when we're looking at some of these brain games and other activities that we know what we are doing is evidence-based. And like a lot of things that you hear about today, it is important to look at the evidence. I've looked through the evidence, and there is an important statement. We'll put this out in one of the summaries, the printed material that will come out after this. But there is an important statement that was put out in 2014 by the Max Planck Institute for Human Development and the Stanford Centre on Longevity. It was putting a paper out about brain games. Now, while it largely was addressing ageing and the benefits of using brain games to sort of stall the deterioration of the brain with ageing, it to me also applies similarly to a lot of the recovery from acquired brain injury. They suggested that brain games offer consumers a scientifically grounded avenue, I'll start that again. They object to the claim that brain games offer consumers a scientifically grounded avenue to reduce or reverse cognitive decline when there's no compelling evidence to date that they do so. The promise of a magic bullet detracts from the best evidence to date, which is that cognitive health in old age reflects the long-term effects of healthy, engaged lifestyles. And in the judgment of signatories, it exaggerated and misleading claims exploited the anxiety of older adults about impending cognitive decline. So basically, they are saying that a lot of the claims are exaggerated. The best way to protect your brain, and again, we've talked a little bit about this today, the best way to protect the brain is by doing things that are all round healthy anyway. So let me give you a few ideas on that. So, and again, I'm sorry that I'm referring to some notes as I'm doing that. So what we do know about protecting the brain, what we do know that helps with optimising this brain plasticity, what we know is good for sort of protecting your brain as it's ageing, that speeds up the functioning of the healthy brain, it's very logical. It's very, it makes sense. Number one, physical exercise. Physical exercise seems to be, not just for the physical capacity of what the brain does, but it also helps with the mental activities. We know that regular aerobic exercise is important. Basically what we're doing with exercise is we're pumping the blood around, it's getting into the brain, it's getting good oxygenated blood into the brain, and that's what our brains need. So regular exercise is very important. In terms of a no-no, sitting around, and in fact they do talk about sitting as being the new smoking, that the effects of long-term sitting are really today's equivalent of the long-term issues of using smoking, using nicotine and so on. So number one, physical exercise is shown to improve attention, reasoning, components of memory, obviously, as well as the physical. So that's number one. Number two, learn something new. When we're learning new things, we are asking the brain, we are recruiting the brain to make these new connections. When a new skill that we have learned has required a lot of reconnectivity going on in the brain. A new memory is reconnectivity going on in the brain. So basically, if we are stimulating ourselves to learn something new, and the more novel, the better, then we are activating the brain. We are generating new neurons to do those and related tasks. Related tasks, not those tasks and different tasks, but those tasks and related tasks. So learn something new, particularly things like dancing. I know that a lot of people will sort of smile at the idea of that, but you think about dancing, number one, it's physical, so there's exercise. Your heart rate does get surprisingly pumped up when you're doing dancing. It's social, which is another thing I'll talk about in a moment as being important. It is learning new skills. It is sequenced behaviour. It requires memory. In other words, it's requiring a lot of these fairly complex skills that we use in other tasks. So learning something like dancing, learning a new instrument, a musical instrument, taking up art, gardening, particularly a lot of these things, if they're being done socially, they're going to be very valuable. They are causing... Oh, we have a question apparently.
I just thought it might be good to ask people, has anyone learned anything new recently in terms of what we're talking about?
So we're asking if anybody has taken up any of these things.
Well, I started this new pouring paint pictures.
So, or what?
It's called pouring paint.
Pouring paint.
Yes, and you have a canvas.
Yes.
But it's specially mixed paint.
Okay.
Paint I found out, and I really had a really disastrous attempt at it, but I went to the craft shop yesterday and I got some, and I apparently can fix the one up. So, but I mean, as I say, I haven't got a way to do that.
Okay, so somebody here is talking about the pouring paint. This is a presumably to make nice pictures and things like that. Again, if it's a new skill, and particularly if it's about, other than just getting the pro-hard approach of throwing blobs of paint all over the spot, if it is something where it is you're thinking as you're doing it about it being and how can I change that, and learning skills through it, then that is going to be using new networks. If it's a new skill that you're developing. Yeah. So we're talking about this being learning a new task, new skills. So if, again, things like gardening, if it's new to you, gardening again is a good activity. It's outdoors, which is healthy. Often it is, you're talking to people, you're finding about plants, you're reading and you're discovering about the nutrition for those plants that they require. It's physical, so there's a lot of benefit from doing that. The brain is making new connections. You're learning how to do a new thing. And again, a lot of the skills are transferable. You learn that you have to put the tomatoes so far when you plant them, you put the seeds that far into the soil. Right, how far do I have to put the potatoes down when I put the potatoes in? How far do I plant? So you become, the skills are transferable, the detail may change across each thing you're doing. But likewise, if you're doing landscaping around a garden, it requires planning. It requires sequencing. You need to think about materials. So again, it's a whole lot of new skill that you're doing there. So dancing, gardening, painting, sculpting, learning a new instrument, learning a new language. I've started to learn Italian. I'm not saying that I'm particularly good at doing it, but it lets me realise how much that is an underused skill that I've been using. Learning how to learn has been an important thing there again. How do I learn Italian? It's just not taking in information. I have to make associations a lot of the time. And I do remember when I was younger learning Japanese, and that was extremely difficult because when I'm learning Italian, so many words are very familiar. Station is stazioni or something like that. They're very similar sound, whereas the same word in Japanese has no resemblance. And so learning one of those non-European type of languages can be extremely challenging because it's learning new skills about how do I acquire information when I can't use the familiar avenues. You have a question?
I am curt and rude and short, but only for a short period of time.
Right.
People that know me love me will ignore that, and I'll get over it within a long time. Most often.
Okay.
Especially my sister, she knows better than to judge me on the way that I say things. My enunciation when I'm annoyed is only for a short time. And we had dinner at her place the other day and she completely ignored my frustration at an answer that I gave her. And the rest of the evening was enjoyable. And I appreciate that. I just don't know why I need to be so short, curt and rude at times.
Okay. So the question was, and are you thinking about this in terms of the neuroplasticity, or are you thinking about this in the question is around I can be short and rude to people, curt, blunt, not all the time, but it happens often, and not necessarily voluntarily. Is that right? You don't mean to be rude and curt and short, but that's the way it is heard. You're not necessarily aware yourself of when you're saying that. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. We can come back and address that in more detail later on. I'll just finish some of this, but in a nutshell, to answer that, one of the things that our brains do regulate is the way we are talking. So as I am saying this, I am thinking to myself, am I making myself clear? Is this what I am trying to say? I am regulating the way I am talking to you. Sometimes when the frontal lobe is damaged, that capacity to regulate is theirs. It's gone, sorry. So if that has gone, then I might tend to say things without thinking, hang on, am I being understood? Is that what I meant to say? Is this what I, And so I might be fairly blunt. If I see something, I might say something about it without thinking too hard, hang on, is that a good thing to say at the moment? Okay, so sometimes I might be a bit more impulsive about what I say, a bit more dysregulated about what I say, because that part of the brain's not kicking in to say, hang on, maybe that's not the best thing to do at the moment. Is that meaningful? Does that make sense? Yeah. We might come back to talk a bit more about that later. I'm going to continue with this about the neuroplasticity though and how to optimise that. So we've said physical exercise, we've said learn something new. We've brushed across maintain and develop your social contacts. A lot of research is showing us that, social engagement, people live longer if they have good social engagement. They seem to have more positive attitudes. They are more, they are nicer people to be around. To me, one of the other things about the social contacts, in terms of the way the brain develops, is it opens us up to different ways of thinking. So when I'm being asked a question, for instance, notice what I just had to do. I had to suspend what I was thinking about, right? Okay, so that required me to stop and exercise that part of my brain that says, hang on, put that to one side. I had to listen to a question. That required me to processing, to move and shift attention to processing that was something quite different. And then it requires me to sort of look at that and think, right, is that something that's familiar to me? Is that something I want to find out some more about? Is that in some way stimulating to me? And it also then requires me to generate a response to it. They are all very active parts of my brain that are important for communication. So basically, if I want to be a good communicator, if I want to be able to maintain friendships, then I need to be engaged in friendships and be practicing that, okay? But likewise, the other thing is it will open me to different ways of thinking. So I may have particular views on, say, climate change, okay? Now, I can listen to the arguments that other people want to talk about, or I can dismiss them. If I want to keep my brain active, it's important for me to try to understand what those other arguments might be. And not just understand the arguments, because sometimes some of the arguments aren't particularly strong for the side that I disagree with, but it's why is this person coming and why are they holding so strongly to this other viewpoint? So that opens up me to getting my brain working and thinking in different ways. If I'm not communicating with people, I get stuck in the way of thinking the way I think. And I don't have any new input to that. I can read, that helps, but I can't get into discussion and test those ideas and develop those ideas and perhaps even take on some of those ideas. So maintaining, developing social contacts is an important one. Another one for brain, to get these connectivity, just the general healthy lifestyles. There's plenty of information there about, what we mean by a healthy lifestyle in terms of not just the exercise component, but diet. Most of us know now about antioxidants and how they are preventative for brain deterioration. Antioxidants, basically, foods high in antioxidants tend to be red. So yes, a bit of red wine, but certainly not too much, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But we hear about the wonderful things about berries, blueberries, cranberries, those sort of things, and they're full of antioxidants. And things like fish, full of omega-3 and things like that. They are all brain foods. They are really important, and our brain can really utilise those. So keeping our brain well fed with that. But obviously, the normal things, you know, good leafy green vegetables, healthy diet, not too much sweet stuff, you know, sugar again is cancer food. Things like avoiding too much alcohol. Alcohol will damage the brain. It is toxic to the brain. The benefit of red wine is the antioxidant within that, and that's probably more so for heart and things like that, a little bit for the brain. But the balance is that alcohol is not beneficial to the brain. So if you're really trying to look after your brain and getting this neuroplasticity working to its best, then avoid those sort of foods, that sort of stuff. Plenty of sleep's an important one. And the other one, because right while I'm talking about sleep, plenty of sleep's important because that's when our brain lays down the new memories. You know, we're hearing stuff, we process stuff during the day, but it's of a night time where that's really consolidated and laid down and put in there and kept. If we're not getting good sleep, we're not getting benefit of what we're learning through the day. And probably the last one, so we said physical exercise, learn something new, maintain, develop social contacts, healthy lifestyle, plenty of sleep, and then the other one is as much as you can to be at peace. We know that meditation does wonderful things for the brain. Again, we get the good neurotransmitters doing their stuff and doing what they're supposed to. The other thing is that we do know, and there's plenty of research around the benefits of meditation, but people who are in loving relationships, those supportive, nurturing relationships, we're finding beneficial generally to healthy lifestyles, so they live longer, but also for the brain. We see that they have healthier brains. So if we want to optimise and make the best of neuroplasticity, they're the primary things. What we do on top of those, you know, the way, like I've said, learn something new, the brain games, they are stimulating the brain a little bit for particular activities, but if that's all we're doing and we're avoiding the exercise, we're not engaging socially a lot, we're not getting good sleep, then anything like that's, you know, going to be so insignificant compared to the benefits of these other things that are well documented, and we can read lots about those as we're looking through things. So are there any questions that you have around those things? There, you know, we'll find that you can go into talking about cancer, you can go into talking about heart disease, you can go into talk about Alzheimer's and so on. All of these, we come up with this same sort of collection of activities. It's all about, you know, what's the best thing, you know, keep active, learn something, you know, get the blood moving, get good relationships, sleep. It's the same sort of pattern. Look after yourself, basically. Okay? So, are there any other questions we have relating to neuroplasticity? You went away for a few days and... Right, okay. So the question was, a woman here and her partner have been dreaming a lot lately, but went away for a few days, and while you're away you didn't dream, and when you came back you didn't dream as much?
Yes.
You were dreaming again?
About my mum and my sister.
But when you were away you weren't dreaming. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So that to me is very interesting. So I the idea being that yes, somebody's been dreaming a lot, and then they've gone to a different place, and then they're not dreaming there, and they come back, and then they're dreaming again. Interesting. I suppose I'm just trying to do a comparison for myself. I know that when I go away, if we go away camping on a trip or something, then I either am so tired from what I've been doing the day, I just crash and I don't remember dreaming at all, or else there's a lot of busy dreams or unusual dreams because I've been doing things that are different. So it may well be that just because you're in a different environment, your dreams are different, or not. Yes. Yeah. Yes. It's a hard one, isn't it? Yes. Okay. I'm not sure how. Yeah, I'm not sure that it relates particularly either to the neuroplasticity, but yeah. Okay. There's another question here too that sort of is related to that that I had following up from the first question. I'm interested in suggestions of books or websites regarding neuroplasticity, even medical journals and the like. Can I have some suggestions? Also, can I give you the top fives? Well, I think I've given you the top fives about how to look after the brain and the best thing for doing it. And the 5 worst things, well, the 5 worst things would be the opposite to those. So don't get exercise. Eat rubbish. Keep yourself so busy you don't get sleep. And do it all by yourself. They're probably the things to avoid doing. The other thing you were asking about was also about brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a thing called BDNF. Again, there are a lot of... the way I suppose our brains function is through neurotransmitters, and in particular it operates in a chemical environment. We have chemicals that work in the brain. And BDNF is one of those things that, again, it's a bit like an antioxidant. It works well to support the brain. It helps with the new development of networks and so on. Yes, read up about that. When you read into that, again, it comes back to if we want to stimulate BDNF, guess what? Good sleep, good exercise, good eating. It comes back to that. Antioxidants and so on. All of these things will elevate the BDNF. So in terms of that, in terms of websites, we will be putting out something for websites that you can go to read more on neuroplasticity and so on. So that I think that does cover that. In particular, I will refer you to that paper where the international scientific community consensus has come out about the use of brain games. Like I've said, there's no harm with brain games. Don't expect them to be a magic bullet. Don't expect them to do anything. But if it gives you pleasure, and particularly with a question that came is, I do these with my husband and we have lots of fun. Well, that's an important benefit, isn't it? That is doing something social, that is enjoying, that is having fun, that is nurturing your brain. So the activity is nurturing your brain. The specific activity may or may not be that relevant. You might be sitting down doing a Sudoku together. Not that you can do that together very easily, but cryptic crosswords, all of those sort of things, they are all good. But notice that, again, with things like your Sudokus and your cryptic crosswords, they're good because they are stimulating your brain, but once you're getting the hang of them and they are becoming, I know how to do these, then they are losing their benefit. At that stage, it's a case of, right, what other activities can I learn? A lot of those brain quiz books that you get, just the old puzzle books about, that you sit down and work through the puzzles. Again, you'll find that after a while they are very familiar. They become very familiar in terms of the way they approach the puzzle. And once you've mastered the way they are doing these things, it's time to move on and learn something new. So the joy for me is that I've retired. I'm very pleased about that, and one of the joys of that is that it has allowed me to get on and do things that I haven't done before. So things like my golf game, although I played golf before, now I have had some lessons. I am trying things in golf and doing it in a more guided way, persistent way, practice way, compared to before where I'd be playing so rarely that I just put together whatever skill I had. Now I am trying to develop that as a skill. and so that will be stimulating my brain in some way. It's social, so I get to have a bit of a chat with the people I'm playing with, and that's beneficial. I'm also doing woodwork. That's not particularly social, but it is a lot of new skill for me. It's a lot of planning, it's a lot of organising and sequencing of things. It is also learning new skills. And it is also about, I don't have the tool to do that. Is there another way I could do that? So it's a bit of divergent thinking that's going on. So that has become stimulating. And the other thing is that, so I've built myself a letterbox, and those who know me come and have a look at sometime. I'm really, really proud of it. And on it, on the side of it, I've also, because I've been interested in artwork, I've learned how to do some floral art. So I've put a nice little Banksia floral design on the side of my letterbox. But again, that as a skill is again a new skill that requires me to learn how to get, when I'm doing the Banksia, how do you get those nice little needles sort of look about it? And boy, did I spend a lot of time working around how to do that. But this is the thing about it, is it's a new skill. And it's like any new skill. You're not going to do it well to start with. But it's about not just persisting, but thinking more creatively. It's not working this way. How else can I do it? What other things? So I had bits of wire out there trying to do it. I had bits of grass trying to, put that, and they were all smudging all sorts of things. Had different sorts of brushes I was trying to do it with. Eventually I got there. So again, it's all about learning new skills. It's about stimulating the brain in this sort of way. Okay. I'm doing a lot of talking. I have a question. Yes. Okay. So the question is, are there other strategies around some of the behavioural things that we were talking about earlier about, so that the impulsivity, about the being rude, saying things and sort of not realising that you've put your foot in it, or been rude to someone, or they've taken it the wrong way. Some of that is, I guess, probably the first part of that is certainly having somebody there who can, if you're with your partner usually, that there is a communication you can set up, so that if you've said something like that, that immediately there is feedback to you that you've said it. So it may be a signal of some sort that your partner sets up with you, that it could be something like that just says, hey, you've just said something that might have been taken the wrong way. And that might force you then to think about what you've just said and say, I hope that didn't sound rude, and then to be very careful about how you say, what I am trying to say is. So it may be just a communication, not on your face, on his face, okay, that he slaps his face, and that sort of is a signal to you to say, you just said something that might have been taken the wrong way, or you just said something that might have been offensive, okay? And then you've got the chance to think, oh, what did I say? I don't think it was offensive. But then you can say, I hope that didn't sound rude. What I was trying to say was, and to think very carefully about rephrasing it. Would that work?
Yeah, sometimes I just hold the conversation and stop and go somewhere else.
So you get impatient sometimes with a conversation. I'm sick of this, I wanted to go somewhere else. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so instead of saying that in a delightful, charming way, I just kind of jump at it to
right.
try and speed up.
So sometimes there is a shift in conversation from you because you've got fed up with the current conversation. Sometimes I agree with you. I think there's no problem with that, and sometimes it requires somebody to do that. I guess sometimes it's the transition of that. You can say, that's really interesting. I don't know why, but that just triggered a thought for me about when I was doing da-da-da, and you just change the subject and start talking about something else. So I don't know why, but it's just triggered this different direction of the conversation. You know. So again, it's about, I suppose, being sensitive, realising that you can be blunt, and just thinking, right, how can I make that transition without being blunt? So part of it's to acknowledge what's just been said and to show that you have been listening. That's a very interesting thing because of da-da-da-da-da. But I don't know why, but when you said that, that just triggered another thought for me, and then you go down the pathway you want to. Politely. Oh, so part of the impatience and frustration, I don't feel like being polite sometimes too. Well, yeah, I guess my response to that is we all feel that way too. Yeah, so it's a cost-benefit analysis. What are the benefits of being polite here and what are the costs of it if I just go ahead and don't worry about it? And I guess the fact that you're asking the question is you know that there are benefits to do it a bit more cleverly. Yeah. 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 So that is one strategy, I suppose, is to set up a thing. The other thing, I suppose, is to know a lot of the stuff is self-regulation is what you're talking about there. Really, it's about self-monitoring. So, yep, you can have a cue set up with your partner where he does that or something like that says, hey, you need to go back and mend that, you put your foot in it there. The other thing though is for you to go into a situation and know, I know that in these situations I do get impatient, I know that particularly if it's with somebody new, you can announce that. It's a bit like if I am blind, I might want to announce that. You might start trying to show me stuff. I need to let you know that I'm blind, so it's easier for you to tell me about stuff than show me. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but likewise, if I know that I'm impulsive and I'm meeting people more than just once, but I know that I want to develop see them more or have more contact with them, I might want to make that announcement just to say, look, you need to know that sometimes and it's a bit like your question, you need to know that sometimes I get impulsive. I can put my foot in it and I can be blunt. If I do that to you, tell me please, and I'll try to clarify what I mean. Okay. If I do that, I'm not wanting to be harmful. I'm not wanting to hurt. I'm not wanting to upset. I'm not trying to be rude. But I know that sometimes will happen for me. So let me know if I do it. Yeah. We could go on for a long time about all sorts of behavioural things, but we're getting the wind up here. So I guess, how do we want to do this wind up? I'll hand to Robin.
Thanks everyone for joining us for the Q&A session. I hope you all got something out of that, and the video will be available for everyone to watch at their leisure when they choose to do so. So thanks everyone. Bye.
Thank you.